There's a lot that I wish I knew when I first started cooking that would have made my life a lot easier. So this video is about exactly that, my favorite tips and tricks that have made my home cooking substantially easier throughout the years, and I want to share them. Tip number one is invest in a good cutting board and also some cheap cutting boards. This is my main cutting board. This is the Booz Block. This thing I use for absolutely everything, but it is not cheap, but it is worth the investment. It will last you hopefully forever if you take good care of it. But I don't cut meats and chickens and stuff like that on it. So I have these small rubberish plastic type cutting boards that are on the back, kind of a grippy material that I'll use to cut things that may have germs or anything that soak into my big board. You can buy some of these cheaper boards that are, crappy, but see, they warp. And when they warp, they don't become very useful. So spend the money when you can, if you know you're going to be cooking a lot, on a board that will last through time and you don't have to keep replacing these, and take care of them. Tip number two is know the use of your kitchen towels. These very, very useful items have a variety of purposes besides just drying. You can take hot things, as long as your towel is dry, in and out of the oven. If they're wet, they might steam and burn you. You could also use them to keep a bowl from moving. If you're whisking with one hand, making a hollandaise of some sort because you're pouring in with your other hand, the bowl may run away. So take your kitchen towel, form a little circle or nest type thing, throw your bowl into it, and it may move a little bit, but it's not running away from you. You could also use that towel to help a board that may have warped or is too slippery sliding on your table, which will make it much safer to use. If you put weight down, it won't really move. That's a dry towel. You could also one-up that by putting down a wet towel. That will also move as long as you're not putting weight down, but once you start to apply weight to it, that board's not going anywhere. So use your kitchen towels. Tip number three is take care of your knives. You can have a variety of knives, but whatever you do, take care of them and keep them sharp. That will keep you safe and it'll keep your food cooked better. This is my favorite knife. This is an all-purpose chef's knife. That's probably what I would recommend to you if you just are getting into knives, but also learn how to sharpen them. I made a video earlier of showing how to sharpen my knife, but keep your knife sharp and it's going to keep you safe and it's going to keep your cutting substantially easier. Too many people use these honing rods, they call them sharpening sticks, but they just keep your blade straight. If your knife is dull, that's not going to fix the problem. So get a nice set of sharpening stones like this and learn how to use them. You could also invest in other knives. I use this knife for vegetables. I use my chef's knife kind of for everything else, or if I want to just use one knife for everything. But once you start to get comfortable with them and learn how to sharpen them, start to grow your collection a little bit. And the more knives you have, the more you're probably going to enjoy cooking, and you pull one out and you have fun with them. Take care of your knives and they'll take care of you. Tip number four is mise en place, or putting things in their right place. Once you're done cutting and you're ready to cook, keep things organized, keep them set up. Once you're cooking, you should just be adding ingredients. Don't chop, don't do things. These little bowls have lids. You can prep everything. I don't always stick to this and it screws up my recipes and it makes things go wrong. Prep everything, separate them, and when you're ready to cook, just start adding things and be ready to go. That's going to save you time, it's going to save you errors, and it's going to save your recipes from being screwed up because you forgot something. So prep everything. Tip number five is not necessarily a tip, but just a cost-saving device. But look on Amazon or places for industrial or kitchen-sized items. This is the wrap, the cling film I've used for years now. I got this for $45 on Amazon, and I've used this for everything. It has an incredible blade. It's not these little flimsy, crappy boxes. I know that's Reynolds wrap, but same concept. You get these things, they're hard to use, you get stuck everywhere. Buy the big ones, and they'll have your back for years. I use this when I make Wellingtons, all those kind of things. This little one is 75 square feet. This big one is 3,000 square feet, and the price difference was substantial. So grab the big industrial size items and keep them for years and just be happier. The next tip for most home cooks is going to be use a Mandoline. Unless your knife skills are perfect, this is going to give you those consistent cuts that will make cooking easier because everything will cook at the same time or in the same amount of time. You can adjust it so many ways to get different heights and sizes. Look at how consistent these pieces are. That's exactly what you're looking for in cooking, is consistency. So a Mandoline will save you time and will also give you these beautiful cuts that your knife skills probably won't be able to get you unless you're very, very good. And I don't always do it, but remember to use your guard. This will stop you from cutting yourself and you won't bleed all over your food. My next tip is to embrace parchment paper. I use this for everything. I rarely use any type of like tinfoil these days. Parchment paper is just so much easier to use, more forgiving, more non-stick in most situations. You could buy these sheets that are already lined to fit your average size baking pan. If you have a smaller one, they're so easy to cut. They also make other ones that you can, come in different sizes and shapes to fit anything you're looking for. I use this for those 1,000-layer potatoes. You can fry and cook fish and get a beautiful skin side down with putting a piece of parchment paper in the pan first. It's just so perfect for the majority of cooking situations where I feel like people were taught to use tinfoil for everything, and that's really not the case. Embrace parchment paper. You won't regret it. Next up is try and own an immersion blender. These things are super useful for a variety of uses. I prioritize them for sauces that I want smoother. You can put that into a fancy blender if you own it, but most people don't. So this is a much cheaper option. Get an immersion blender. You can also get ones that have a ton of attachments like the one I bought. And it has stuff like, a food processor, also the container that I made mayo in, which I'll show you again in a second just to remind you. But they make these that have a ton of attachments, but to me the most important part is the immersion blender. You can use this to puree things. You can use this to make sauces creamy and rich. You could also just use it to chop up things in the other settings like that food processor. So tools like this will be transformative in taking your cooking to the next level. My next tip is how to peel eggs better. You're going to start by taking them and tapping them on the bottom, not cracking, but tapping till you hear a popping sound. Right there. As you can see, the egg didn't crack, but that popped the membrane on the inside. This egg peeled beautifully. Normally, older eggs peel much easier, but these were brand new eggs, and doing that helps them peel, in my opinion, the easiest. Another quick little bonus tip is don't discount kitchen scissors. If you have something like a green onion or something like that you want to cut up real quick, you don't feel like getting a knife out, or you just want to cut it directly over a pot and drop it in, cut it with kitchen scissors. You could obviously use these to cut through bones of chickens and that kind of poultry, but use this for easier things like just cutting small vegetables. And my final tip is understand the value of pasta water. For the majority of home cooks who aren't getting sauces as creamy or as emulsified as they want, it could be fixed by simply adding their pasta water. That starchy pasta water when you're making sauces and pastas is gold. So remember to use it, remember to add it. It will thicken your sauces. If they get overly thick, you could also use it to thin your sauce a little bit. It will bring everything together and it will make it a restaurant quality sauce because that's how they do it. Starchy pasta water is your best friend when you're cooking pastas.